Yeah, first of all, really pleased to welcome you, Elly, Elly Taylor. Sort of first got into this work as a new mum and relationship counsellor at the same time. And around that time, I guess that was a big catalyst to write and author the book Becoming Us, which has gone on to make some big changes and help so many people, particularly from a relationship perspective with partners in that early phase of parenthood. Um, Elly is an internationally recognized parenthood and relationship expert, and of course, the award winning author of the mentioned Becoming Us. Her groundbreaking approach includes fathers and partners every step of the way, from pregnancy and birth to those blurry first months and beyond. So, welcome, Elly. We're really stoked to have you here today.
Oh, thank you. I just cringed when you said expert. I should have taken that out. I have such mixed feelings about that word. But anyway, yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Oh
Well,
dear.
they
Really good
say
to
when
be
we've been
here.
doing
I've been
something.
looking forward to this for ages. Really, really good to be here. And seeing some familiar faces too. So hi to those of you that I have met.
Oh, it's really great. As I say, we're super stoked to have you here. And I think whenever you do something for 10 years plus, and particularly write a book on it and devote your life to it, I think you've earned the term expert, and really awesome to see how humble that someone like yourself with your skill set and the difference you've made for people can be as well. So
Mm.
what we might do right now is just pass around. We're going to do our out of tens. Guys, just because we do only have the hour today, I'll just invite everyone to be fairly brief with their out of tens so that we can get the most out of the time with Elly. So might start with let's go to Nana Kim. How you doing out of 10? And then please hand over to somebody else after you've had a turn.
Oh yeah, I'm a 12 out of 10 today. Be what I talked about before. And I've got a Dad's Root Mother's Day breakfast coming up this Sunday, so I'm excited about that too. So I'm going to hand over to Adam Burns,
Hey, all, I'm a
legend.
10 out of 10 up at Mount Isa at the moment in a cafe. And yeah, had a very exciting few days up here. So I'll hand over to the person sitting across from me, Tom F.
Just got you on mute there, Tom F. There you go.
Yeah, I've tried. There's probably a bit of echo because they're sitting next to each other, but yeah, I'm a 10 out of 10. Been really great up here in Mount Isa for a couple of days, so it's really great. Some good steaks last night, so that's awesome. So yeah, that's really good. Hello, Reg.
Hi everybody. Yeah, I'm a good 9 out of 10. It's a weekend, it's on its way. We've got a new parents group meeting with dads tomorrow, and my kids are back from camp, so it's going well. Let's go to Kerry.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm just eating an apple, having lunch. I'm good. Busy Friday, quite good quiet week. Well, not quiet, but productive. And then yeah, I'm probably I reckon about 9.5 out of 10. Good Friday. Just got a lot of things to try and get done this afternoon, but I'm here to listen in. So yeah, thanks. I'll pass over to Max.
Thank you kindly, Kerry. I'm probably feeling slightly flat today, but I've got a lot to look forward to. So I'm going to go with about a 7. Yeah, it's been a stressful week at work. There's been a bit of change happening. It'll all be good, but it's been a stressful week. But we've got a dad's group kind of Mother's Day morning cook up to give mums a bit of a break on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. It should be great. And I'm going to go to Alexander. How are you, mate, out of 10?
Hello, everyone. This my first time in, so it's lovely to meet everyone. I would say probably 8 out of 10. Feeling a bit tired, but overall pretty good. It's my wife's first Mother's Day this weekend, so my a lot of my energy has been putting into try and make that a bit special for her. So yeah, buzzing to kind of get Friday over with and then get stuck into some of those moments over the weekend. So, yeah, I'll pass over to Thomas. I don't know if Thomas has gone already.
Hey guys, I'm a 10 out of 10. I've gone away and the kids have been looked after, and yeah, I'm stoked to hear everyone. And I particularly was excited to hear Max's Mother's Day cook up on Sunday. I think that's an awesome dad's group thing. And I'm going to hand over to Mr. Boniface. How are you out of 10, mate?
Thank you, TD. I'm kicking along at a 10 out of 10, guys. I got back from a 6-day sort of men's facilitator retreat in the bush in Mullumbimby a day or two ago. So yeah, I'm thriving from that. So many processes and learnings, hoping to bring back and pay it forward to some other people. I think the only other person apart from Elly is Sai. Over to you, mate, and then over to Elly from there, please, bud.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, well done, Andrew, with all of your work. That sounds awesome. And I think I'm similar to Max, about a 7 out of 10 today after the dentist yesterday. But yeah, thanks, Elly.
For me, gosh, if it wasn't Mother's Day this weekend, I would say that I'm probably a 9 out of 10. But because our two youngest daughters are both overseas at the moment, I'm pretty bummed about that. So maybe down to a 7. But hopefully our son's coming over, but we'll see. And if he doesn't, then I'll be down to a 5. Anyway, apart from Mother's Day, I'm good. And really happy to be here. So let's just go with the 9.
Nice. Well, and I love the human element there too, Elly, because yeah, clearly your kids mean a lot to you. And how old are your kids? Your 3 kids you told us
that's gonna
about.
be so revealing. Okay, so our son's 30 and our daughter's 27 and our little one is 22. So yeah, all grown
Okay.
up. Mm.
Well, could we kick off, please? Just yeah, anything that you think's pertinent for us to know about yourself, and probably what catalyzed you diving into this journey would be really amazing to give everyone a bit of a context around that, and where
Yeah.
it's taken you, and how the Becoming Us book and concept has taken off, please.
Gosh, okay. Okay, so let's kind of start at the beginning. So if we start at the beginning, I have to say that my husband and I were crazy in love for about 10 years before we had our children. Like we were just mad for each other, right? And having a family was our natural next step. We thought we were really well prepared for it. We obviously weren't, but we thought we were really well prepared for it. I was ready to leave behind my career at that stage, which was in recruitment. We'd already purchased our first home. Like it was just supposed to be a natural next step for us. But when it happened, look, everything went great. The pregnancy was great. Our birth experience was awesome. We had a fantastic midwife that just choreographed this beautiful, birth experience. She just included him in everything. And really that beautiful birth kind of got us through the first difficult weeks. But not long after that, the wheels really fell off us. And before I say too much more, I have to tell you that my husband is now a mental health and lived experience advocate. So he's completely comfortable about me talking about this stuff. We're both lived experience and mental health advocates. So we have that agreement that we are both support each other to talk openly and honestly about this stuff, because I think we need more open and honest conversation everywhere, but particularly in this very, very vulnerable space. So we didn't know it at the time, but his anxiety was growing, I guess, the closer the birth became. And I noticed a change in him probably about maybe 2 months before we had Zach, who's our eldest. He really started becoming kind of withdrawn from me and was getting a bit kind of preoccupied with particularly the financial aspect of becoming a dad, because I was the main breadwinner at that time, and we were going to lose my my income. I decided I wanted to be a full-time mum. I was going to leave my job and maybe go back part-time at some stage. So he was really starting to stress about that. And the stress of that was really starting to impact on our relationship and me. You know, I kind of just sort of put it to one side and sort of things will be okay. Like, you know, it's, you know, an anxious time. Once the baby's born, things will be fine. So I didn't really kind of flag it with anybody. Nobody asked how he was coping in that, you know, at that time. And so about 4-6 weeks in, we were arguing. I was wondering what the hell we'd done, wondering if we'd made a huge mistake, because we'd been happy for 10 years before this. So it was just like so radically different. You know, our us before we had our baby was so radically different from our us after we had the baby. But at the same time, I was retraining and started working as a relationship counsellor. And I was seeing couple after couple after couple. This is in between our first and second children. We went on to have another baby, even though things were awful between us. Obviously, they improved enough for us to try again. But I was seeing couple after couple after couple that were going through the same things that we'd been through pretty much at the same time. So that's how Becoming Us started, was listening to those stories, like, you know, different versions, I guess, of the same story over and over and over again, and kind of tracking those stories. My background's emotionally focused therapy, and that's what an emotionally focused therapy does. So I would track, you know, the mum stories, the dad stories, the couple stories over, you know, sometimes it would be a period of years, not seeing the clients for years, but they'd come in years after the problem started. So we kind of looked back to where the problem started, and you know, 9 times out of 10, it was after the birth of a first baby. So I started delving into the research, and there was this, you know, like there's decades and decades and decades of research that having a first baby is really tough on a couple's relationship. It impacts a couple's relationship. But that research hadn't translated into any sort of antenatal preparation or education or whatever at that time. It's just starting to come through now. So I realized, you know, in hindsight, that a lot of what we were grappling with as a couple and as individuals, as new mums and dads, was because we hadn't been prepared for what I learned was normal and common life changes and relationship changes. And so I had this kind of guiding question in my head, you know, how could things have been different for us, and how could things be different for other couples if we can prepare them for the life changes that are coming and for the normal and common relationship changes that also happen when partners become parents. And so with that, I really started advocating. My work first started making, you know, I first started getting attention and making waves with the birth community, with the midwives and the doulas in North America. It actually started spreading there before it started spreading here, which was really annoying. But anyway, that's how it happened. So really becoming an advocate for including dads, like in the first appointment, whoever that's with, whether it's with a GP that's doing shared care, or whether it's with an obstetrician, or whether it's a midwife, or whether it's a doula in America or whatever, like really including dads from the get-go and seeing the benefits then of that right the way through. So the earlier and the more they're included, the more and earlier the benefits are to the whole family, like in just about every variable that we could think of that's relevant. So yeah, so I've been advocating for dads' inclusions, well, since before the book was published, but the book was published in Australia and New Zealand by HarperCollins in 2011. And it got more attention in the States than it did here, which was really interesting and exciting and frustrating all at the same time. And from that, talking about the book, you know, mainly on Facebook back at that time, I started getting invitations to present at conferences overseas in North America and in England. And so I started presenting the model at conferences internationally. And from that, I started getting approached by professionals who worked with expecting and new parents, psychologists, social workers, it's LMFTs, licensed marriage and family therapists in the States, relationship counselors here, wanting to train in the model. And so I set up an online training course. So this is back in 2014. I think I was one of the first online training providers in Australia because of that. So when everybody jumped online during COVID, I'm like, got this. I'd been doing it for about 10 years before then. And yeah, it's grown from there. So that's led to training a perinatal mental health team in the UK, which I did 2 years ago. And it led to the biggest thing probably in my life so far, which was that I got approached by my local area health district in southern Sydney a couple of years ago. Well, it was back in 2020. They had funding from Community Justice. I don't know if you've got Community Justice up there, but they had funding from Community Justice that had been allocated for community capacity building, professional capacity building, and prevention early intervention. And so they polled the interagency. I don't know if you've got interagencies up there either, but we have an interagency in Sutherland Shire. So that's all the perinatal related organisations, the hospitals, the private providers, the not-for-profits, et cetera, the community groups. So they polled the interagency, and the interagency really identified the need for relationship preparation and support and the gap everywhere in that space. They evaluated 2 programs. I don't know if any of you have heard of Gottman's Bringing Baby Home, but that's the American program. So they evaluated Gottman's Bringing Baby Home and Becoming Us, which obviously is Australian. The big difference, I think, between Gottman and Becoming Us is that Gottman's very cognitively focused, whereas Becoming Us is more emotionally focused, because that's my background as an emotionally focused therapist. And thankfully they chose to go with Becoming Us. So I trained about 22 facilitators across 2 hospitals and 8 community groups, including Playgroup New South Wales. And between 2 waves of COVID, we managed to do a pilot with 16 multicultural couples. We had a fantastic cross-section of couples. We had Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, we had Bangladeshi couples, we had Arabic speaking couples. We had, it was fantastic. It was like the dream pilot group in terms of nationalities and age span too. So they span from 18 years old, so we had teenage parents, up to I think about 44 was the oldest person that we had in the group. So we just had this beautiful pilot. And to cut a long story short, as a result, Becoming Us nest building sessions. So nest building is stage 1 and stage 2 of the 8-stage Becoming Us model. So Becoming Us nest building sessions have now been actually integrated into antenatal education at the St George and Sutherland hospitals. So all first-time birth. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. So all first-time birthing parents who are doing the having your baby part of antenatal education, which is 6 weeks, also do Becoming Us nest building sessions. And we've had about 500 couples go through it now since 2020. So it was a minor miracle with the lockdowns and all the rest of it that was going on at the time. It was a minor miracle that we got it through. It's been running ever since. That's amazing. So that's my first. I think you asked a question way back in the beginning of my ramble, Andrew, about what's the highlights. Well, that was the first one. And then the second highlight was that I'm partnering with University of Wollongong, which is where our son graduated from. Oh, I have to mention, so the two hospitals that I've mentioned, St George and Sutherland, are actually the three hospitals where our three children, were born. So like this is like a full circle moment for me personally too. It's in my community. So yeah, so that's particularly rewarding. And the other part of that is, so I'm partnering with Wollongong University, which is where our son graduated from, to evaluate the Becoming Us facilitator training, which is training the facilitators to run Becoming Us or to integrate it in their ways of working. And they're also evaluating a longer antenatal program. So we've got 2 antenatal programs and 2 postnatal programs, and they're evaluating the longer antenatal program. So it's growing close to home, which is how I always wanted it to happen. Things have died down in North America, which is good because that's just such a big mess at the moment. Anyway, I don't really want to expend much energy there as much as they need it. But yeah, that's it, I guess. Yeah, a long answer to your question.
No, and really vital information for all of us to hear as well, Elly, because not only does it speak to the way you started by normalizing shared experience that you noted in your own relationship and seeing how many other people were going through the exact same stuff, which then allows people to just relax into being normal rather than the ones that they think are the only ones going through these issues. And then it's also really inspiring on another level as well to hear how long you've been going since starting in 2011 and still getting these amazing recent results, which speaks to the consistency and hanging in there and continually putting your message out there, and how you can get huge change by just hanging in there as well, which the more recent wins you've had in the Sydney region sound like they were the more recent ones in Wollongong, to be able to, help so many more people after starting back in 2011. So, you know Tom fairly well, and I guess Dad's Group started 10 years ago. So, we're all hanging in there and making some big change and hoping to emulate a lot of the things that you're doing as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that recognition. And it's been really hard. It's been incredibly challenging in so many ways that I know that Tom would identify with. And yeah, it's thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm really glad that I have hung in there because things are really starting to pay off now. But it's been almost 15 years. So yeah.
Yeah, unreal. Well, yeah, we're all here and we're not going anywhere. So
Yay.
as you know, you're talking to most of the leaders of Dad's Group, and I'm quite new to the organization compared to a lot of the faces that you see on the screen. So really blessed to be here myself.
Yeah, and again, all kudos to you because it's people joining in and their enthusiasm that keeps founders going as well. It's people like Kim who are championing it, and people who've jumped in early that have kept it going for me as well. So all kudos to all of you here as well. It's because of you that, it's going but also growing. So yeah, goes both ways.
Amazing. Well, my next question relates to, I guess, some of the key challenges that couples face. And I'd like to throw in a bit of a nuance to the question around maybe some cultural changes over time as well. I know Tom talks a fair bit about the change in what we used to have as more of a village mentality throughout history and a tribal sort of existence.
Yeah.
And we've moved away from that quite a bit with our culture. So I'd just like to ask, along with that sort of thing, assuming you may resonate with that, what are some of the other key challenges that couples do face that cause some of the issues that you spoke of earlier?
Yeah, look, I love that you've started with that one, and let's stay with that one before I move off that one, because I do talk about that quite a lot, that parenthood really is a rite of passage. And traditionally, that had 3 main phases. And the first phase was saying goodbye to the old way of life. The second phase was facing the fears and uncertainties of the new way of life. And the third was emerging back into the community with a new sense of identity and increased self-esteem, because having babies basically ensured that the tribe kept going. And we are so far removed from those 3 things in our current world today. We don't make space for saying goodbye to the old way of life. We don't make space for talking about the fears and uncertainties of life with a baby. And in fact, well, this is kind of interesting. So in terms of emerging with a new sense of identity and self-esteem, the research says that when men become fathers, their self-esteem tends to go up. But when women become mothers, their sense of self-esteem tends to go down because they're just a mother. And if they've left work, they're losing their work sense of identity and they're losing their sources of self-esteem that came with working. So this immediately sets couples up, if we're talking about traditional partnership with mums and dads, this immediately sets couples up for what I call the great divide. And that is that they've got different experiences of becoming parents and that their experiences are not just different, but almost opposite. And this happens in a number of different ways. Well, I'm getting granular here, but are you with me with what
Absolutely.
I've just said? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And like I could talk an hour just about that, but so this sets them up from the get-go to have different pathways. That's what I call it, different pathways through parenthood. And we find that each of these pathways, or I've found, and what I've like described in the book, is that each of these pathways can have a different trajectory. So for some couples, it's kind of growing apart, growing back together again, growing apart, going back together again. For other couples, depending on different factors, it's growing apart, growing apart, growing apart, growing apart, growing apart, and separating. So at its heart, Becoming Us is a model to help both partners support each other and travel together through pregnancy, birth, and early parenthood in ways that they grow closer through the changes and challenges rather than grow apart, which is what I was seeing in counselling a lot of the time. So that's probably about 10 challenges. I'm sorry, I tend to give way too much information, but I'm really passionate about this knowledge getting out there. And then, one of the other challenges I think too is that we just don't talk about the really important stuff. There's so much focus on the birth. There's so much focus on looking after the baby, and both really, really, really super important. But it's this other stuff that we don't pay attention to that's undermining parents' ability to both be the best parents they can be as individuals, but also to be like a really supportive partner for their spouse or partner. So it's all this kind of messy, complicated, complex, weedy, unspoken stuff that's really making the biggest impact. And it's the stuff that we really need to start talking about. And it's the stuff that we really need to start, unearthing and exploring. That's the most challenging. So it would be, unexpected relationship changes. That's probably the biggest ones. It absolutely breaks my heart. And I had this conversation yesterday with a group of perinatal psychologists that I'm training at the moment, that new parents are so desperate for relationship support that they will seek it out from anybody. So they're talking to their GPs about their relationship. They're talking to their girlfriends about their relationships. They're talking to their hairdresser about their relationships. They're talking to maybe a psychologist about their relationships. But unless anyone has had perinatal relationship training, which doesn't exist in any training course currently for psychologists or anybody else that's working with expecting and new parents, it's a gap. It's a massive, massive gap, right? So unless they've got this specialized training and knowledge, they're potentially getting really bad advice or really bad information. And in some cases, I've heard from parents who've seen a psychologist, and they shouldn't be doing this, but they've seen a psychologist and the psychologist has basically said, look, I can't see any other options. You should think about leaving. And I'm like, well, why can't they see any other options? Do they have training in perinatal relationship dynamics? And most of the time they don't. So I'm seeing and hearing from parents that are separating that don't want to separate, but they don't see any other option. And that absolutely, can I swear? I'm assuming I can just, like, it
Please do.
absolutely
Please
gives me
do.
the shits that this is happening. And it's something that I'm also doing about. So, like, oh, look, I hope this is not sort of breaking the bounds of anything, but there's all these like online directories now that are popping up, where parents are going and they're accessing these directories, but there's no indication that the person on the directory actually has perinatal relationship education. So it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible for parents to find the right people, the right people to guide them through this stuff. And that's where I'm working really hard behind the scenes to change that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really wild. And look, maybe to reflect on what you've said, there's a lot around there of just not having the space, because I guess we're living in this world where the cost of living is going up quite a lot. We're in quite a hustle culture these days. I like to think of it from the point of view that I guess the saucepan of tolerance that we have, which would normally have from the bottom to the top of the saucepan through which to rise up in a stressful scenario, is generally already simmering halfway up to 2/3 of the way up, which doesn't really give us much room to wriggle in terms of resilience and bouncing into a stress response, which doesn't do us any favors.
Yeah.
I had a marriage counselor say one day, when emotions go up, intelligence goes down, and that was certainly what happened in my experience of this period. But yeah, not having the space, and also as a recent review we did on one of these calls, the quote came up: "It's not a lack of will; it's a lack of skill." By someone that we reviewed overseas, which sort of is exactly what you've just said. And if we don't have the skills, then unfortunately we'll sink to the lowest level of skill we have, rather than the highest.
So that's exactly
so
what
no,
we're covering in nest building sessions. Like that's exactly what we want to do with the nest building sessions, is give couples, some really basic but necessary skills, but even more importantly, awareness around what's likely to happen, so that they can use those skills really kind of strategically around certain issues, like really kind of narrow it down, helping them to focus on what's really most important, like as soon as they get the baby home, so that it's not so overwhelming for them. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And I feel so strongly about that, because there is so much scope for prevention and early intervention in this space. Parents shouldn't wait to have to see a relationship counsellor, which is currently literally the only option for dedicated relationship support, which is, it's inequitable. It's out of most parents' capacity to pay for that, and it often comes too late. So there is this humongous gap in upskilling and awareness raising, and with professionals as well as parents, with this stuff. Yeah. Couldn't agree with you.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying we could be, a lot more proactive than reactive. And I was just wondering, from all your experience in this area, would you mind naming, the top skills that you think that we as fathers in particular could work on? Where's the biggest gaps that you've found that have caused these relationship issues because of a lack of skill? And what skills could we hone in on?
Yeah, you've actually kind of mentioned them, but one of them, which I'll talk about next. But the first one is, and it's not necessarily a dad thing. I think it's a human thing. We tend to approach so many topics in terms of right or wrong. Like our whole media landscape is set up, like our whole teaching, our whole evolution from the village to the crazy world that we live in today is set up with right and wrong. And in the parenthood space, that's really unhelpful, because with most issues of parenthood, there is no right or wrong. There's two parents' perspectives, and they're both right. And so that's how we kind of have to approach things. And they're the skills that parents need, is to be able to approach things that there's two rights here. and we need to make space for both of them. So it's a really different way of approaching, you know, it's not, parenthood stuff is not problem solution. They're not problems. Most of the things aren't problems, they're evolutions. They're not problems and solutions, but evolutions. You know, it's a different approach. We need to take a different approach when we're talking about parenthood, because we're talking about deep stuff. We're talking about potential trauma. We're talking about stuff that goes back to our own childhoods. We're talking about stuff that's hard to put words to. We're talking about stuff that triggers us and our partner. So a lot of the ways that parents are approaching things have been kind of trained, I suppose, or educated to approach things, just doesn't work in this space. And that's why so many couples are flailing, because it really needs a different approach. So the approach that I've found that does work, and that comes from my background in emotionally focused therapy, is to look deeper and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. A lot of what comes up is emotional for you, for your partner. And like you said, when emotions come up, intelligence goes down. I actually don't agree with that, because I think that we can build our capacity for emotional intelligence. And that leads to my third point, which is, and apologies, I hope I don't offend anybody, but generally speaking, women tend to be more comfortable maybe with a range of emotions. Okay, lots of nods, few. Okay. So because women tend to be more comfortable with a range of emotions, we're more comfortable at that level, at that deeper emotional level, right? And we often want our partner to come down and meet us there, to get out of the head stuff and the right and wrong and the shoulds and the obligations and all the stuff that stress asks us to pay attention to. We want you to come down out of there, and we want you to meet us underneath. We want to know what you feel about things, sure, what you think about things. We want you to be interested in how we're feeling about things, what we think about things, because in my world, you've got the head stuff, and then you've got the emotions underneath the head stuff, and then underneath the emotions, you've got the needs. What do I need? Okay, so in emotionally focused therapy, you've got your head stuff, then you've got your emotions, but every single emotion is human. They're all signals that guide us to a need underneath. So if I'm scared, I need reassurance. If I'm happy, I want to throw that around and have it reflected back to me. If I'm sad, I want to be able to cry on your shoulder. And these emotions are not gender specific, they're not culturally specific. They are how we lived when we were back in the community. They are how we lived. They bonded us as human beings. That vulnerability was shared. And we've gotten away from that because we've been socialized differently as boys and girls and men and women. And we've been socialized to be comfortable with some emotions and not other emotions. So for example, for men, it's not to be comfortable with your sadness and your fear, but for women, it's not to be comfortable with your anger. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So it's almost like, you know, the future of humanity, if you like, is going backwards, is going back to being human beings with a whole range of emotions that we learn how to express appropriately, as you would, I'm sure, do a lot with your dad's groups, expressing, you know, the anger emotion, the anger appropriately. It's also expressing the sadness appropriately, or, you know, and embracing our vulnerability, to quote Brene Brown, because that's where we meet. That's where we meet our partners. That's where we grow with our partners. That's where we can really support our partners. It's a much deeper level of support.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I went on a trip to Nepal about a year or so ago, and I came back with this epiphany that we're actually less advanced in the Western world. And I said that to a few friends, and they looked at me like I was nuts, because obviously we've got the technology and the medical technology that's a lot better than somewhere like Nepal. But it was just the lack of anger, the authenticity of people. I think it goes back to your point that men as well as women in those parts were probably behaving a lot more as part of nature as opposed to separate from it, where they're able to go into their bodies and be less in their minds, as we seem to be in the Western world, particularly as men, and more in our bodies and communicating therefore from the heart. And it blew me away. And yeah, I think the work that we do at Dad's Group under the leadership of many of the guys on this call is as much about, you know, getting down and speaking vulnerably back into our bodies, speaking from the heart with all the men in the program. So yeah, it's lovely to hear your thoughts on all of that. And to hear about the needs under the emotions, you know, see the emotions as a message, and to then ask ourselves, what message is that telling us about what we need in this moment, or what do our partners need?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's a good segue into the next question, which is, you know, what are 2 or 3 things that dads can focus on to support their relationship? And I mean, you mentioned a really great one was to get down into the emotions with our partners. Are there any others that we could, as dads, start implementing a bit better in the Western world, in Australia?
Yeah, I think, okay, to kind of piggyback on that, I think recognizing that relationships are a series of processes. So there's no right or wrong. There's no kind of, you know, absolute here. They're a progression. They're a series of processes, and processes can always be slowed down and rerouted. So, you know, like if you have an argument and you have a bust up and you walk away and you think this is hopeless, that's never, ever the case. Like we do a lot of repair work in relationships when we're counseling, when we're working with couples. So there's always opportunities for slowing down, for backtracking. Like you've got more control over this than people often realize. People often, when they're, you know, in a situation where there's differences. Like, let me give you some statistics around this too, to really normalize it for you. So 92% of couples report increased differences in the first year of having a baby. 92%. 67% of couples report feeling more distant from their partner in the first 3 years of having a baby. So it's really normal to have new differences, but it's really important how we approach these new differences. Again, if you approach them as right and wrong, you can imagine the trajectory for that couple, right? Whereas if you approach them from, well, there's two perspectives here and they're both right, you can imagine the different trajectory for that couple that's managing the differences in those ways. You know, like one couple will end up growing closer, but the first couple may end up separating because that can take on a life of its own. So it's recognizing that relationships are processes, and how we manage the process at lots of different points in time can either have us growing closer together or have us growing further apart. So, you know, empowering dads with that knowledge. The other one in that, and it sort of goes back to what I was talking about with the emotional depth, is that we can be communicating at 2 different levels. Like just to give you an example, we can be arguing about moving some furniture and whether the bookshelf should be, you know, on the right or the left of the door. Okay, so that's one level of differences or conflict. But if we're arguing about something over and over and over again and there's no resolution, that's something that tells me that something deeper is going on. And this argument isn't actually about whether the bookshelf should be on the right or the left of the doors. There's something else going on underneath, which is what I call hidden concerns. And hidden concerns are things like, do you value my opinion? Are you really listening to me? Do you care? Do you respect me? These sorts of things. And both parents can have these hidden concerns. But you could argue for, and I've worked with couples that have argued for 20 years over should the bookshelf be on the right or the left. You know what I mean? Because they never got, Kim knows what I'm talking about, because they've never gotten down to the underneath of I feel like you don't respect me around this issue or whatever. So, you know, there's it's a lot about having different perspectives and deeper perspectives, I suppose, that helps dads, partners, parents move from growing apart, which all couples do after they have a baby. All couples go through a stage of growing apart after they have a baby. Well, most do anyway. 92% go through a stage of what I call growing apart. So knowing why that is and what to do about it orients them back to growing together, which is what we want. I'm just aware of time, and we haven't even got to the last couple of questions, and I'm so sorry. I am passionate about this stuff. There's
No, please don't be. No.
Answers. Yeah.
Well, you could talk to you for 3 hours, Elly. So
yes,
no dramas. It's the questions are just a guide, and I think I might have chucked an extra couple in there that weren't on the list as well. So everything you said is so powerful, and particularly what we make things mean about ourselves with the example that you talked about with the bookshelf example. And I'm just wondering, you know, how much those meanings that we place into a situation which aren't true come from childhood trauma, and how much does it become an individual's responsibility to then go and work on that stuff to be able to show up without taking things so personally?
That is such a big question. And again, like I could talk about that for an hour, but that's key. Like most of the stuff that's hidden below the surface goes back to our childhood. Some of it trauma, some of it neglect, some of it whatever. But added to that also is our capacity to face that stuff. And that's going to be different for everybody based on, you know, how much support they've got, what their internal resources are, what their external resources are. So responsibility comes with capacity. Like, let me give you a recent example, and it's a personal example. And again, I have my husband's permission to share this. So he recently got diagnosed with ADHD, no surprises there, PTSD, he's a firefighter, and anxiety. And so his capacity up until the diagnosis has been incredibly low for a whole lot of stuff. But since the diagnosis and medication for 2 of those 3 conditions, it's 100%, like as far as I'm concerned, 100%. So we are now having these conversations that I've been talking about. You know, for the last 12 months, we've been having these conversations that I've been talking about that we haven't, as a couple, had the capacity to do before, because it was triggering for him in some way, shape, or form. So that's a very personal example, but it's top of mind for me as we're talking about this stuff. So it depends on the individual and the individual circumstances.
Yeah, and that's a real subtle and really important nuance to throw in there, the capacity to take responsibility. Thank you. I guess we can all, as men, have a think about our own capacity and ways we can address that as well.
And that could be a mental health thing. It could be a neurodiversity thing. It could be a just I'm exhausted today thing. Like, you know, that's going to be influenced by a whole bunch of different factors too.
Yeah, and look, in my own experience, it was being extremely tired, fatigued, run down, and just not giving myself the capacity building in terms of daily habits and filling my own cup up to be able to give more to my family. And look, I'm just so blessed to be part of this call with you today, because as we touched on before the call started, you know, my marriage ended after a really tough first few years of parenthood when we had our little twins come along. And I was just flooded with overwhelm for the whole time, and didn't show up in the way that I was proud of or wanted to at the time. And I tell you what, having some of this information and someone like you in my corner with all of the amazing information that you've been throwing out there around becoming us and other things would have been a game changer. That's for sure.
That makes me really sad, Andrew, but yeah.
Oh, look, it happened for a reason. I wouldn't be sitting here if that didn't happen. And as I told you as well, got a beautiful co-parenting relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe we can finish off on, something really positive in terms of, what's the picture of an ideal happy couple these days, and how can we utilize a lot of the information we've been discussing here to cultivate the most joy in our relationships?
So again, that's a really interesting question, because I wouldn't say that the goal necessarily is to be a happy couple. I would say that the goal is to be in a partnership where you can feel and express all of your emotions and have your partner support you in that space. So parenthood is joyful and happy and wonderful and awesome and loving and great, but it's also frustrating and boring and, annoying and all the other so-called negative emotions. And for me, the words ideal and perfect don't fit in this space. But being a loving, supportive couple, let's go with that. Let's go with being a loving, supportive couple. Is not pressure to be happy all the time. It's okay to be sad or annoyed or frustrated or irritated, as long as you can share that appropriately or manage it yourself or whatever. It's being real. I think being real is more important than anything else, is that I can be my 100% real, authentic, vulnerable person, and you love me and you're there for me anyway.
I love that. Thank you. And probably another question I'd like to ask about that exact thing is sort of off the back of publications like David Dieter's The Way of the Superior Man, where he talks a lot about sexual polarity of the masculine and the feminine, and suggesting that men can potentially go and talk about the emotional side of their experience with other men in a men's circle style environment to be able to then come back into the relationship without having an impact on that masculine feminine polarity for the relationship success. Did you have any comments on that in terms of how a man should show up dumping his stuff in a relationship versus handling it outside and then coming back into it from a more masculine perspective to be able to be more solid in the relationship as the masculine?
Oh, how much, have we got another hour? That's a big question.
Yeah.
So what I teach and what I find useful in one of the sessions in the training is we look at the layers of intimacy. So we look at types of intimacy and we look at the layers of intimacy. And so the outside layers are just affection, a peck on the cheek. And you might do that with, lots of different people, even people that you've just met. But then there's another layer that you might just reserve, for your mum and your aunties and your whatever, people that are closer to you, your friends. And then you've got another layer that you just share with your partner, and then you get closer and closer to the core of intimacy, which which is sex. So you've got like affection, then sensuality, and then sexuality, and then sex. And I wouldn't even say it's a masculine and feminine polarity, because I've worked with dads using that model, and they've said, "Oh, I'm like that too," and I've worked with women who would identify, or people who would identify as women, who've said that they've got the more masculine kind of spin on things. So again, I come from a very human-centered perspective, I suppose. The important thing is, where are you meeting your partner? Where are you meeting your partner in that model? And where are they more comfortable? Where are you more comfortable in that model? Where's your partner more comfortable in that model? And where could you meet in that model? So that's not answering your specific question. It's another way to answer it, I suppose, through my lens.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate that, we could talk about this for hours and hours. And thank you for giving a brief summary on that one. What I'm hearing is that just treating each other, particularly from a dad's perspective, as most of us here, with a lot more patience and understanding, without having the right and wrong lens on. As you said, nothing's binary. and nothing needs to be decided right here and now because relationships span a long space of time. It's wild. We could definitely talk for a lot longer, I'm sure. There's a couple of questions in here from Sai and Kim asking where could we gain some more information about this and possibly train further with some of this material, please, Elly?
Yeah, sure. It's all in the book. So the book is Becoming Us, The Couple's Guide to Parenthood. I don't have one here to show you, but you'll find it. That's the most recent edition. So it's Becoming Us, The Couple's Guide to Parenthood. It's on my website. So the website's becomingus.family, all one word, .com. The details about the training is on there as well. So it should be all there. That's the best place to start.
Sai's just said that he'll definitely check it out, and so will I, 100%. And I reckon a lot of the other gang will be. We might even run another huddle training on some of the more expanded material from there. Looks like Kim's got a question. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi, Elly. Just amazing. And yeah, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, and I would love to be able to have this program or a group, if it's a group thing as well, to come to South Australia I work in children's centres, and there's 45 of us here, children's centres. So not working in the centre, but 45 children's centres, and we're often looking for really authentic parenting programs, positive parenting programs, and about being parents together, not just mums and not just dads. And I would love to be able to, and I'll check your website out for sure, but how do, as a jack of all trades, master of none, I'm not a professional. How do I go about, if there is facilitator training, to run some of the groups? Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you. And yes, please. And let's keep talking. So the first step is to do the training, and the training will give you father and partner inclusive relationship-based approaches right from the first session. There's 14 sessions of training, so you will learn father inclusive relationship-based approaches to all the things right from the beginning, which you can use from the first session just in your day-to-day interactions with parents. But once people have completed the training, they can apply to run the Becoming Us programs. There's 2 antenatal programs, group programs, and there's 2 postnatal group programs. We've done pilots for 3 of the programs, so they are evidence-based. One of them actually was a dad's group program that was run in Western Australia. So and so then you can apply to run those, and we can take it from there.
Thanks. In the past, I have I'm so qualified. I haven't run it for a long time, but I've done dads tuning into kids, dads tuning into kids. So it's around emotional coaching and emotional intelligence.
Right.
So I get a lot of what you were talking about around that emotional intelligence stuff, and I love running the group. It's very much again evidence-based worksheets, things that the guys can take home, and parents can take home. Samples, and it's around, it's the emotional coaching. So you don't have kids with behavior like this. It's like this.
Meeting the need.
Life is like this. It's not like that and that and that and that and that. It's much more. Breathe. You can breathe.
Pause and breathe. Look, it sounds like Becoming Us would dovetail beautifully with those programs, because Becoming Us is the same thing but for couples. So it's almost like pre-parenting. It's like everything that you practice with your partner now about regulating your emotions and communication and all that sort of thing is going to pay off when you're parenting your baby or child, because you've already practiced it with your partner for a couple of years. So
thank you. I could talk to you forever, and I won't, because I usually hog all the space anyway, so I'll get off now.
We'll do it later. Sounds good.
Good on you, Kim. I'll just read out a message Tom's just put on the group. That amazing. I've sat in the car with Kate listening to this. We laughed and cried in this session. It's been so special, deep and authentic. Thank you so much. And Tom's asked if we could possibly unpack some of these questions a bit more in another session down the track, Elly, considering we're a bit out of time now, if that's possible.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'd love to have you back. Absolutely. It's been really, really powerful. I guess prior to telling the gang about some upcoming, I guess, topics that we've got, particularly on Monday night, I'd love to ask you, Elly, if there's any key messages that you'd like to sign off with, just considering that you're pretty much talking to all of the leaders, or a lot of the leaders of the dads group, who will go out and be able to share a lot of these concepts with a lot of the dads at our events and different online calls. Yeah, is there anything you'd like to leave us with today?
Look, the thing, it's funny that I didn't have anything in mind, but I've noticed that with my husband and the increased awareness around, what the struggles have been for us over the last 30 years, because we're in a neurodiverse relationship and because there's been the mental health issues, is like, slow down. Like, we need to really just slow down. Okay, 3 things: slow down, make space, and get curious. That's probably where we've been at for the last 12 months, and that's what's really turned our relationship around, is slowing down, making space, and getting curious. Yeah.
Wow, what a great way to finish. Thank you. And even as you said those words, I was able to feel so much calm infused through my body as well, because just slowing down feels so nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't rush.
Just prior to giving you the final thanks, Elly, I just wanted to tell the gang that on Monday night, gang, we'll be kicking off our first week of a 6-week series of some really in-depth special guests that will be on some calls. On Monday night, we'll be having Simon Hastings talking about first aid for dads, and particularly some of the key things that we could be equipped with, have up our sleeve for any of the major first aid occurrences that might happen with our little ones. So please jump on. That'll be 7:30 Monday night, Australian Eastern Standard Time, and please feel free to invite at least 2 men from your dad's groups. It'd be really amazing to get some more people at that one as well. Elly, I'd just like to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for being here. And so grateful for the work you've been doing since 2011, writing the book, and everything else that you're doing to change Australian culture as we go.